And this is where we worked on developing a curriculum that can help train medical doctors, not just South Africa, but anywhere in the world, helping improve medical service and facilities, improving of human health and the effects to climate adjustment, because coupled and uncoupled are different, about a 50-50 in South Africa, you could say, is a very rough estimate. But a key thing also is how do we bring in biophysics teaching to first year and second year medical students so they can understand this process. And we did that by the courses we put together was 2, Introduction to Submolecular Medical Science, Agricultural Sciences. However, the last moment, we put into a hybrid of the 2, where we had participants from around the world. I mean, we had South Africa, USA, Hungary, Netherlands, France, Canada, Croatia, Nigeria, Philippines, Italy, Poland, and I think there were some other ones I'm missing here, but they're all part of this. And this was targeted at undergraduates, masters, PhDs, and professionals. These persons could get European course transfer credits. So while they're getting their degree, they could use this learning and practical application to help for their recognition of new training understanding to change the current system. And to help propagate the changing the answers. And this is very, very important. We even had a famous co-recipient of Nobel Peace Prize, Ivan Culjak, which was contributing and involved it. And it was very important having him because, like I said, we're talking about science diplomacy is helping the public understand how science and diplomacy work together and come into policy here. And Ivan Culjak, again, still alive as a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, and he understands the politics and the work and the frustrations that's involved in how do we change this answer, how do we move forward. And him being a person, an expert in chemicals, weapons engineering, it was very useful to this whole process. But again, it was a very pragmatic course. It was about how can you take things at home and using this model we developed, which is a Photon Flux model, and can you test it yourself? Can it be implemented around the world? And one of the examples we have from a clinical trial is even one of the participants in 24 days after its immense surgery as a result of cancer, having his vitamin D levels increasing by 33%. Now, look, anywhere in the literature, you are not going to find these type of results on the old answers to the same questions. And this is very, very key because this is what it was teaching, and people can anywhere around the world can demonstrate, replicate through understanding these mechanisms. This is very, very important. And again, and the reason again why we brought in there Albert Einstein, John Paul Pope II, and his Academy of Sciences, because we're also looking at a Deuteronomistic history of how we're taking old texts, the Jewish Testament, different tablets, former prophets, Hebrew, all these different things, because even like with Dirac or St. Basil, these are important things that come forward that we have to look at the past. We use science to help look at it differently and help try answer these questions that we've had before. And from that, we are in line with the Batho Pele principles of we are bringing about positive change. And that's very important. We did this to have to do it through demonstrating and involving the public. And one of the things we put together, great guy, you can check him on YouTube, Google and find him, Charles Collins, Together We Grow campaign. And Charles, wonderful, he's a coupled haplotype, his wife's uncoupled, he's got his wonderful children, they're in the middle of a desert, and he's a military veteran using work from the NASA Human Research Program. And we take what can we change and adjust to help his health change drastically. I mean, a third of his scalp grew back with hair. He grew six-pack abs. You see it on the course, and you can sign for again for next year. And just these simple things like going from energy flux model to photon flux, which we'll discuss, and him taking a single pipe, a plastic tube that you find, be a hose pipe, it can be from an IV tube, a catheter, any of these things. And just by retrofitting it to an existing water pump that you have, it's even ones you find a washing machine thrown out, you can significantly change how the water chemistry changes, and it changes the environment. So in the beginning, I talked about Luc Montagnier, I talked about Doug Wallace, of how by changing the environment and the signal on water chemistry plays significant difference on how it impacts the greater environment. So we had this even with Charles demonstrating, and this has been reported also before in previous models and government organizations, of him applying these changes in the middle of a desert between his backyard, which he has, compared to his front door of his house. There was a 5 to 8 degrees Celsius temperature difference. No air conditioner, no covering roofs and doing all these, bubble effects. just by how we applying this work of biophysics, and thanks to, like I said, Desmond Tutu and other equations, we were able to make significant differences. And this is the key thing. This is an example again of the model of submolecular medical sciences or agricultural sciences and the energy flux is the photon flux model. So what it means in medicine, right, or when you see a physician, one wants to work with nature as much as possible before clinical intervention. So what that means is, a safe example here at the very top, we've got how much vitamin intake extra increases there in mushrooms. So everyone loves mushrooms for the cooking or anti-inflammatory properties, but not many persons understood what is capable of vitamin D input. Again, vitamin D from a mushroom is very different from vitamin D you find in a tablet or made by the skin of the body. So by using an energy flux model, meaning just you buy it in the store, it's grown, it's covered in plastic, not using it, you have only about 40 units growth, right? So it's nothing, it's very, very little. But all that energy, all that driving, trucks, everything gets you that little amount. Great thing again with mushrooms, it's very easy to grow at home in plastic containers, recyclable. Again, demonstrated with the Charles Collins campaign. If we are using nature, all right, we go from 40 units to 46,000 units. That already is astounding. That is just you cutting your mushrooms, putting them out in the sun, or behind a plexiglass window in your kitchen, and you're going to get a significant input. So if you want to do an experiment, cook a meal of mushrooms that you just bought from the store, no changes, versus mushrooms you've chopped up and put in the sun all day. And you will feel that difference. Now, again, we use science, medicine, physics, biophysics to explain those mechanisms, why and how to measure it. But the key thing is here of you as the public experiencing it, just like Desmond Tutu would do, just like John Paul Pope would do of taking persons in a different environment. You will experience that difference. So what happens is that when this is not enough, or it's not an intervention, and this is where the photon flux model comes in, is that we're using technology, we're using light, we're using our man-made effects to significantly boost it. So not just from 46,000 to 267,000. So what is significant here is I do not need to do a whole bunch of elaborate or crazy tests because the numbers are so big and so profound. This is what's so counterintuitive of quantum mechanics and quantum biology. Very counterintuitive to understand, but pragmatic implementation of you just cutting your mushroom and putting it in the sun makes a significant difference to your daily intake. And again, you grow at home easily. You're not spending money of driving to shop, climate change impacts, all these things to change your situation. Cold joy. We've got Dr. Pierre van der Merwe here, and he did a fantastic recent documentary where this just used to be, you know, me working with him and teaching and working this whole process, and persons then as a survival mechanism to the change of COVID, to the change of magnetic flux drop in over the Western Cape that we're going to cover later on, thanks to NASA's data, that it brings about this large group of people. I mean, you're looking at 50, 150 or more people coming in, and not just in one location, but multiple parts around it. Very key things that are important here is that not to wear the sunglasses, not to wear sunscreen, not to have your belly exposed, because these are going to block and reduce your ability to get the most optimum amount. Like I said, you got your mushroom here. If you block it with everything, you're going to get 40 units. Where if you're using the sun and you actually use more like solutions that we use on humans, you're going to get these significantly greater returns as a bioadaptive strategy. And this is what's very important. And part of this, like this movement of the cold joy that persons are doing is demonstrated in this Netflix Academy Award called My Octopus Teacher, where you have this man who's free diving in the water, and he's doing it in the kelp forest. And this exposure to cold and changes in his health. And this is, again, South African demonstration of what is already shown as general consensus around the world for both coupled and uncoupled haplotypes, but different environments, different requirements. So this whole teaching, and where we use nature to enhance, is done by a wonderful group where they do a shark safe barrier, where they have these tubes that look like artificial kelp forests. Sharks typically do not like it in a natural environment, filled with magnets, and this is 100% it works of keeping sharks from crossing a barrier. All other fish, all other items go across it, but it also enables biorestoration. Again, a few adjustments, you're going to have a much better result. What's useful here, right, is that when a person not doing scuba diving, but free diving, holding their breath, or we use other mechanisms, one is going to get much better results with that whole process of growing and better. So one can use nature to apply medical treatment. So you have a person with a horrible disease, neurological disorder, not only are you helping nature here, but you're having significant growth gains for a person who can connect with nature, feel safe, and have this growth of dopamine and growth for their health. So this is, again, application of systems. And this was tested also in La Réunion in France, where it went through massive storms, it went through the salt water, and it keeps on going. So it has minimal maintenance to it. And it's a very useful system for the National Health Insurance Act of how can we bring medicine application to the public cheaper and better with these different better understandings. Another example, we did the Isle Domain residential place here, where we're doing different examples of applying these pragmatic elements to it. So one example here, we've got the library here as a study room section. And I love, there's a reason why we put the picture of push, and you have to push the envelope, you have to push the difference. And what's important here is that we've got these algae columns in here. We're applying, there's a magnet at the bottom, magnetic field. Again, you have to understand the size, otherwise you're going to have a decreased growth or increased growth, not enough. But again, we focused on this pragmatic approach of, can you buy this type of column in a supermarket? Can you modify it, adapt to other technologies, make it cheap, and make a difference to the environment? So when any persons in the environment want to come here, they can just walk into this room and you will noticeably feel the difference. I mean, persons will report it's softer, it's not so dusty, they can breathe better, and it's a study area. And the interesting irony here is that the more the persons in here are breathing out CO2, the better this system functions, meaning it produces more oxygen. So that little column of 8 liters there is producing the equivalent of carbon sequestration oxygen to about 50 houseplants. So imagine this room, and with 50 houseplants at least, all the soil, all the watering, all the frustration, yet you put into a small little column here. And this is it. I mean, it's a high stress area. We're putting the extra light here of different photons, photon flux model, because at the moment, the lighting in there is, they have to fix the dark night light cycle, but we're also wanting to push the stresses. So a high stress environment, you've got blue filtered light through the window here. We're putting an AC field there because we want to see how can we counteract high AC effects to a static magnetic field versus a DC system, even though this whole system easily runs on a power bank that you use for your cell phone, which is wonderful. It's all designed to be very, very simple, very easy. And the best thing about it is because it's growing so densely, any resident in the building, that's what the staff do as well. They come take a cup of it, take it home, and they grow their own algae columns in their own homes. And you definitely feel the significant difference. So it's free. And it's part of this Ubuntu process, this Batho Pele of sharing and working. Even the office area, this is just what I did in a quick afternoon, where in our hospital ICT department, now it's going to be the other department, we've got the algae column there with the IR light, and they were complaining of horrible headaches, horrible migraines. Persons would refuse to be in here. And just by using this column, and just by me using orange tape, of plastering tape that costs €4 for 33 meters, this whole room changed that persons can concentrate for longer, OCD and ADHD disappeared, no medication, more increased oxygen, router unplugged. So we're using the model of first address the light, then other persons will understand the other elements. And again, I haven't even gone over the other aspects of these screens. We're doing OLED screens and updating other mechanisms. This is just using a simple piece of tape, very pragmatic. And even, persons think, oh, I must use this expensive spirulina or recipes and everything else. So this is a spirulina column we had on the left here, going for quite some time and growing very well. You can see the very strong densification at the bottom there and top because of the magnet. This is after 5 days, where I put literally a teaspoon of algae from the dirty canals of the Netherlands. So picture that. This was purely clear and white, using a teaspoon from the canal, what's built right next to your nature that everyone considers as bad. Algae is bad for you, it's horrible. And this is it 5 days later, producing significant amount of oxygen and changing the air quality. and it's free. That's the key thing. It's nature, and we're using it. And we're using the light in the room, static magnetic field, and LEDs at the bottom to enhance the process of growth. So it's not just by using the magnet and lights, we are able to triple oxygen production. Simple little thing. A magnet costs, a couple of euros. Easy, no problem. In the cinema, that's what we have here for persons demonstrating. Because almost all bacteria and viruses do not like the environment, alkaline or the redox environment of algae that it's in there. So it's sucking in the CO2 or the air, it's purifying, softening it. So because in the cinema room, it was a lot of complaints, people having headaches very quickly, tired, lethargic, and grunt on. The smell was bad as well. So by applying these algae columns, by putting different lights, changing the spectrum on the projector, you even get different projectors now. So if you do have a movie projector, make sure you order a 3-laser system projector, not a single laser projector system, because that enables you to change the system better for those effects. And so these are important things of making these differences that are pragmatic, easy, and movable. This is a great project of started on the Canal here, where there was a lot of complaints of horrible smell. You have the drain runoffs from the building, there's oil deposits, plastic pollution, all those kind of things. So they put these let's find a picture of it. They made these little islands that were installed. These islands, it's basically plastic that you get from the hardware store with PVC tubes underneath them, and they put some grass on top. So these plastic islands, there were 5 of them, and they were total 22, each island was 4,500 euros. And the last island they had, they just threw away our scraps and was dying there. So I went in there, found some plastic bottles that were already in the canal. I just tossed it as pollution, put them under the non-floating ones, and we had this wonderful little island that started growing and progressing here. So this island starts growing, it's moving, and these lily pads you see on the bottom here, this is after 2 weeks. So we got the bubbles filtering through, cleaning the water, changing the zeta potential. Fish that are not well actually come, and the fish here are almost the size of my arm. So when they have the parasites or the eating on the side of them, they come and they sit in these bubbles here, and they actually treat themselves and surviving better because of the high oxygen tension. So what I did here was taking the algae column, producing oxygen, simple little tube mixed in with a pump to produce nanobubbles. So these white little fluffs you're seeing on the top here, over there, that is the oxygen and the zeta potential reacting with the pollution in the water and cleaning it out. According to move away, treat it, clean it, and cause the plants to grow a lot better. And this was, again, demonstrated with Charles Collins. Simple, easy thing. And this is not even me doing a whole extensive hack and really, going full out into it. This is designed specifically that anyone in the world can do this themselves to change the environment. And that's the key thing, very, very important. Anyone, as science diplomacy, can make these changes. So even here, like with schools, persons complain about brain myelination, Wi-Fi in schools, terrible screens, bad light, bad airflow, and this does impact growth and development of a child's brain or growing. So what I did in this project here, they had a music room, again, horrible mess, horrible noise, and changing the lights, fixing the wiring on the piano, and even doing the oxygen system. This is my daughter here. I'm not legally allowed to put the other children that were involved in doing this participation, but very important here is that she is looking on an OLED screen, learning how to play music. And what's very important is between an energy flux model, which is your standard or your general convention, what you have in schools now, versus changing your photon flux model, is that she's doing about 30 minutes a day, about 4 days a week. And they had a concert here recently for the whole building. And she chose herself to want to play for everyone, composing her own music and writing her own sheet music. So what's important, and I'm going to give an example of my kids, and this is also on other kids as well, from as young as 3, using how you change technology to work together. They're learning to read, they're learning to do mathematics, as counting, they're doing synaptic response to their fingers and body, and a melody and movement. So even above here, there was a giant Wi-Fi router. We unplugged it because it was not configured correctly, yet you're still able to have a signal and it was changing the effect from it. This plant leaf over here in the back, all these leaves used to be like dead and dying. We changed the lights. That's all we did in the space here, putting the orange tape, and you have this beautiful new leaf growing and expanding here. This tear on front here is from the previous damage or before, but everything else, look at that roundness, that crispness, that volume in the plant. All of that is demonstrated just by changing light first to understand EMs later. And these are important things. This is just, again, things that everyone can experience and understand. But what's very important here, and the key message, like Tutu would say, you must involve the people too. Government is the people. So in this whole process, we first targeted having the staff feeling better in the environment. We changed their offices. We made them retrofit to office. We changed how they understand their parts. We changed how they are able to take this back home and apply in their own community environments. So now, even when we do the cinema room thing of the ice packs on the belly, you've got community competitions now, or they call it competitions, where people are sharing, go, hey, let's do this together. Let's do the cinema project in our own homes and communities. They're at a barbecue or braai, and they bring the algae cups and they give it amongst their family and friends and say, hey, I want one too for my home. And they build and build it and build it. And the key thing again here is that government is not an ivory tower. This is why in the report, we specifically put people's names. We put their pictures, because to understand that it is people and you are those people as well. And that's very important thing about Batho Pele principles of putting people first, meaning that government people must also be put first as well. And we attend to them and make the facilities better so that you can feel better. And that's why the Charles Collins campaign was so vital in this whole process. We did it in social housing as well, significant differences. We made the salt bath differences. Very interesting thing, by changing the lights, this is important, the whole Cape Town situation. And like you saw, like those plants growing much better, the leaves here as an example, there was a decrease by over 70% of electricity consumption or energy consumption in the communal areas, like common areas. And the plants grew much better and people fell asleep earlier. So when persons have a complaint about Wi-Fi and cell towers and signals being sent out at night, because everyone's using devices, and this is how 5G works, is that you have increased power density the more devices are interconnected. Have the persons fall asleep, and this is the interesting thing, is when we had persons change the lighting and they could see the difference between the Wi-Fi router affecting the oxygen consumption and growth of the algae columns, they purposely went and disconnected more and more routers, configured them differently, and actually even put power switches with a small remote, cost €3, and from their bed, they push a button and their Wi-Fi in their home is turned off. So you have all these changes because you're having the person thought of first to make themselves feel better and sleep better. And this is key things. And we bring together back again of looking at legislation. And the difficulty in science diplomacy is that when a diplomat makes policies, it's many times 20 or 30 years in advance of what it is. So technology has not caught up, or we don't have the technology yet to implement it accordingly. So that's what we do. We took existing legislations, we modified. What can we do based on the new answers? How can we retrofit? How can we make it better? How can we use it cheaper? And this is very key and important because, just like I said, using orange PVC plastering tape, right? Simple things. Everyone says, James, too expensive, I have an excuse. Or I don't want to order new lights or street lights, or it's too hard to order, it's too difficult. This is found everywhere. In plastering and in hardware stores, you can find it. Like I said, here in Netherlands, €4 for 33 meters. And people go wild. Your fridges, your bathroom lights, your balcony, outside, street lights, you can change. So depending on the strength of it, you have a spectrometer. It could be one layer of tape or 2 layers of tape to make that difference. So if your government department says, oops, we're sorry, we spent the wrong, bought the wrong lights for your street lights, you can say, look, you've got your truck, bring it through, let's put the tape on there, it's cost effective, I'll even pay for it, and let's fix the lights to comply with legislation. So again, you have to help your government people to make those differences. And that's important. Like I said, in this whole office here, this section here, I did this in 30 minutes, a whole section of employees that's over 30 people, just with PVC tape. And they felt calmer, relaxed, the noise volume was less, people weren't having the headaches anymore, and the room environment was cooler as well, because we're using the algae column with the process to filter and change the air. So what's important here is that some people say, well, let's just put more oxygen in the room, right? So I'm putting more oxygen. Oxygen is one part of the facet, But if I do not change the lights to help increase oxygen tensions, meaning like with water, is that I can drink water and I can breathe oxygen, but if my cells are put into a hypoxic state or they're deregularized, they cannot absorb it, which means I will be hypoxic. So I can put a whole bunch of oxygen in the room, open windows, but if I have the wrong kind of lighting configuration or wrong kind of RF signal, I am not going to be able to breathe and hold those oxygen tensions or oxygen that's needed inside of me. That is why we change the environment. This is what's demonstrated on those different Nobel Prize awards and Franklin Awards and so forth. So again, it is in the general consensus of scientific community already, in medicine, science, physics, etc. We also go, like for Western Cape, when I was back in South Africa, in the report here, we referenced a wonderful changes where you could actually then see the night sky. So persons complain about 5G satellites or how the environment's changing. It's extracts from the course here, where, just by changing the lights, persons can start to see the stars in the skies again. They can be part of nature and connecting and enjoying it. This is what astronomers do. It's how they connect and study nature. And we want to do that effect. And again, the effects with the lighting, this is just in 5 days, same irrigation, similar type of weather conditions. And on that ground over here of this nature reserve, that you have the dunes right behind you here, you've got horrible fires, erosion, everything else. So I haven't changed irrigation, but the evidence is clear, right? Changing a light bulb or changing the photon flux model of less energy input, but change the frequencies, you get bioadaptation from nature. Even here, no fertilizer. The common thing, persons think, oh, put more water, put more fertilizers. Diet and exercise or nutrients does not equal longevity. It's about how these energy or photons or light interact with your cells and water to change the effect. And this is what's well demonstrated in Doug Wallace's talk and also Himmler's work. Again, this is significant differences. This is something that anybody in the world can test, and this is what we've done. We have tested it. Even, for example, here, this was also in France with the whole Canal aspect of, I said, all I did was take a tube and put it with existing water pump. So this is before. I'm in the canal, in my Kaniki, getting sun with me. And again, for those of you who believe it's you can be burnt by the sun, no. Michael Hamlin is on our committee. The fantastic thing of if you're in the morning sun, you build a solar catalyst and you're not burnt by the sun. So this is on me, my wife, my children, other people as well. By following this recipe of nature in the sun all day, no burning. This is me at midday here. So you got the canal, you cannot see anything there. This is very bright and clear. This is just by putting a little tube there, 24 hours later, you can start to see the fish. And this is 1.3 meters deep. And this is 2 days later. This is the bubbles that I'm referring to. It's changing the zeta potential. This is the new plant growth in 3 days. So this is what it looked like before, all this dead type of roots and all these long, elongated, white, bright roots in 3 days, just by changing that. So what are you doing? Enhancing it, that these plants are now absorbing the pollutants, the fertilizer and components in this mucky water, and you're working with nature to help you through the process. Again, visible fish, clear water, no chemicals, no pesticides, nothing, just by using a little plastic tube. This is underwater. You can see the dramatic change. And the reason why I like to use it is because this is kind of a representation of neurodegenerative diseases or personal diseases, that we can stimulate nature to grow new, better, stronger tissues, organs, and cells to respond better with nature. This is what is a way of translating of the public being engaged with science. So, okay, what does this mean? Again, a few kind of new information here. And this is also how we change the language of things. Right, so with this lighting analysis research, we know that energy flux model is misinterpreted from the modeling of the Nobel Prize for blue lights. And what's important is that we rather transfer and change to energy flux model. That's very critical and key here. Again, it's the same question, but new answers. So UV radiation is no longer called radiation.